All right, good afternoon, City College of San Francisco. We are 1 minute past the hour. We are scheduled here this afternoon from 2 to 3. Good afternoon and happy last day of the fall semester. We'll give it another minute to allow some additional campus community members to join us as we let folks find their way into the Zoom room. So we'll get started here in just a second, but appreciate your time today away from wrapping up the fall semester. The topic of today's forum will be the reopening plan or the reopening concept that we will approach as an institution here in the coming semesters. We do have a brief presentation, about 25 or so minutes, and then after that it'll be an opportunity to engage in conversation and dialogue and hopefully answer all of your questions before we leave on or before 3 o'clock this afternoon. So that is a rundown of our schedule time together. So we'll go ahead and pause for just about 30 more seconds to allow any last minute attendees to find their way in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So 1 minute and then we'll push off the shore. All right, we are over 70 participants now, so that is a good number, and it being 3 past the hour and being mindful of everybody's time, we will go ahead and get started. Good afternoon once again. My name is David Martin, and it is exciting to get to spend the next few minutes with you, the broader CCSF campus community, to engage in a dialogue and answer questions regarding a reopening concept. Many of you may have seen this presentation in different circles. We've been to the department chairs, we've been to PGC, we've done some presentations to the classified Senate leaders. So this presentation has been making its way through our governance groups and our committees. So if it looks familiar, it's because it is a very similar presentation, but we are updating it constantly as we get different feedback from the different groups on campus. So what we'll do this afternoon is I'll spend about 20 or 25 minutes and go through the draft reopening concept. Please feel free to raise your Zoom hand or type a question into the chat. We'll try our best to keep track of all of the questions and make sure that we have some time at the end to try and respond to them all. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and grab my screen. But before I do that, I would like to just see if I can be savvy enough with technology to drop the plan into the chat. And I think that I may have just done that right now. So I hope everybody can see in the chat function a PDF link to the plan. So please, if it works better for you, pull it up on your own device and follow along. But with that said, I am going to grab the screen and we will start working our way through the document. And I am looking for a few nodding heads to make sure everybody can see my screen, and I do see some, so thank you. And like I mentioned in the beginning, the idea of the draft concept is a 3-staged approach to reopening up City College, utilizing the spring of 2022, so the upcoming semester, as the implementation of stage 1. And then we would use the summer of 2022 and the fall of 2022 as the implementation or the go live date for stage 2. And then we would use spring of 2023 as the stage 3 and really the final component of the implementation process. So with that said, that's more of the higher level overview of the reopening concept. And up there at the top, this is something that I think we've all become familiar with over the last several months and last several years now, is that this is obviously subject to change based on state and local health guidance, as well as recommendations from our health officials based on the circumstances at the time, with different variants and really an evolving situation of future unknowns. It's being mindful that the situation that we are planning for today may be different when we get to that time in the future. So it is subject to change, and it will be a constant communication line, and really something that we emphasize and focus on in the spring as we go through this initial stage 1. So real quickly, and we're going to spend most of our time this afternoon on stage 1, because focusing on what's directly in front of us, I think, would be the best use of our time together, because stage 2 and stage 3 in the fall and the spring of next year, a lot of things can change, and that's going to obviously be an evolving conversation. So focusing on the spring of 2022 is how we're going to spend most of our time together this afternoon. So as we're looking at the plan, or the draft plan, stage 1 is entitled a partial return, but with campus limitations. So in stage 1, management and classified employees are to resume and engage their full work assignments. So the expectation, a transition to our full work assignments would be on site. Obviously, during this time, we're still very flexible with accommodations and providing opportunities for split shifts or staggered shifts. It's really being mindful that we want to transition back, but do so in a way that is not promoting unnecessary congregation. So that is kind of the plan for phase 1. We're continuing to implement social distancing throughout campus. We're also looking at in-person meetings. So as we come back in the spring, if employees are comfortable and there is proper space to have an in-person meeting, those would become something that we would encourage and permit here in stage 1. Looking at building access being limited to personnel only and students with classes. So obviously our buildings are open now for some limited classes and for employees to access it for different items. But in looking at the spring, it's really establishing the expectation that our buildings are open during business hours. We do have door monitors and campus ambassadors in place. We're working throughout the entire semester to make sure all of our HVAC and our circulation, our ventilation systems are up to date with COVID standards. We're looking at the outdoor facilities, such as the track, reopening. Some of our outdoor facilities during business hours would be part of the phase 1 approach. And then continuing to be mindful and progress forward in implementing our R2C plans. I know we have an established process. So stage 1 does not completely circumvent that process. It is part and connection with that process, and really is a reminder that we need to continue to move forward as efficiently as possible through those processes. As we know that students will be permitted on campus, as we welcome students back in stage 1, we are welcoming them back for classroom instruction. We do hope to provide opportunities for in-person office hours for our faculty and our counseling staff if needed. Also looking at study and shared spaces. So as our students come back, they're going to need a space that maybe not the instructional or the traditional instructional classroom, places to study, places to sit in between classes, potentially places to get something small to eat. So it's really looking at those areas and providing those spaces in a safe and an effective way here in the spring. Also looking at technology needs and computer labs, looking at how we can maybe open up some of our computer labs for those students who need that access to technology. And then as we communicate with our students when they're coming back in stage 1, we are still being mindful that we are asking folks to come onto our campus, receive their instruction, get the services that they need. But at this time in stage one or in the spring, we're not encouraging unnecessary congregation. We're not promoting hanging out on our campus just yet. We want our students to come on. We want them to get access to what they need, but then we would ask that they then leave the campus once their work is done here. So that's going to be part of our communication to our student body throughout the spring semester. And then looking at the possibility for in-person registration opportunities. So as the summer schedule of classes becomes available in the fall, if it is feasible and we can work through logistics, making sure that as a goal, we potentially have in-person registration opportunities as part of the spring semester and as part of stage one reopening. Jumping down to item number 4, our face coverings and physical distancings will continue to be required throughout stage one and throughout the spring semester. And we got a great question and a lot of good feedback in regards to some of the state and local health guidance that we've seen in regards to mandating a face mask indoors. Regardless of what the health guidance is going to potentially say in the coming months, I do think we're at a point where we are going to stay true to requiring face masks indoors throughout the entire spring semester. That may not be the same as other indoor facilities, depending on future health guidance. But that is something we are committed to throughout the spring semester, which is mandating face coverings or something to that effect during the spring semester. And then making sure that all of our common areas, such as our break rooms, our hallways, our classrooms have maximum occupancy posted. So we know how many individuals should be in a space based on distancing expectations. And then obviously having shared workspaces will need face coverings. So any conference room work or any desks that are in an open room together, the expectation is that face masks be worn throughout the workday. Jumping down to item number 5, our administrative services in connection with our risk management and really working with our AA and SA groups is to really use the spring semester to focus on implementing measures such as health shields, floor marking, hand sanitizers, etc. Some of that necessary and what has become basic health items, that those need to be constantly evolving, and we need to put those in place where we need them as an institution. So utilizing the spring semester to really make sure we have those items in place for the summer and the fall as part of stage one. Looking at strict nightly cleaning protocols, obviously we would love to have every facility deep clean floor to ceiling. Our custodial staff does an amazing job. They're here every day working to keep our facilities clean. But being mindful that we need to set an expectation that is realistic and that we can continue to achieve without putting an unnecessary or unrealistic burdens on our custodial team. That's something we'll have to do in the spring. We'll have to develop a plan that is realistic and sustainable and that we can communicate out to the campus and that we can all commit to and depend on when it comes to cleaning rotations. Looking at training opportunities, making sure that we have training for our employees and our students on our infectious disease outbreak plan, as well as any type of online supplemental training such as clean and healthy workspace training and trainings to those effects, making sure that if it's available, it's out to our campus to be taken at the employee or the student's discretion. And then looking at item number 6, we are at a point in stage 1 where our campus governance groups and our search committees are still meeting remotely. But with the caveat that during the semester, if a committee or if a group wants to collectively explore the conversation about potentially having a committee meeting or some sort of group in person on campus, that is something we would be open to in regards to discussions in the spring, looking at space options. But it's really going to be up to the committee and the committee as a whole to start, those discussions if they feel comfortable in doing so in the spring semester. We're still continuing to promote and market our COVID safety campaign and our student outreach and monitoring for our online services. So it's important that as we start bringing students and employees back to campus, that we don't lose sight that we are still primarily an online campus next semester. So we need to stay focused on our online programs and services and not lose sight that that is still a very high priority as we start coming back to campus for more face-to-face opportunities in the future. Employee travel will be optional based on the employee's level of comfort. I know statewide conferences or opportunities are opening up, so that will be up to the employee on their comfort level. Making sure that we have an employee submission feedback opportunity. So, for example, if I come to campus and I see something, having an opportunity to report that and have some follow-up is something that we need to get in place as part of stage one. It could be either email or a digital comment box or something to that effect to where we can have a way for our employees to communicate what they're seeing when they come back to campus. And then looking at our website, updating it routinely with information, health guidance, and updates to this plan, as well as our campus-wide communications are consistent and timely. So making sure that throughout the spring semester, we're consistently and appropriately communicating information as we slowly come back to campus. And then down here at the bottom, we have positive cases through our student health services and general COVID inquiries through HR. So if we engage with students or if we are in a situation where there is the potential for a positive case or a confirmed positive case, we're still directing all of that through our student health services. The team there has done a phenomenal job in working with our students and our community members through what has become a variety of different situations and circumstances. So they will continue that great work. And if we have general COVID inquiries as employees, those will go to HR. So we're making sure that if we just have those general questions, those go through HR, and then the positive cases and the student cases are going through student health services. And then lastly, down there at the bottom, number 13, enforcement of safety protocols of will follow our standard campus student and employee discipline process. So if we experience a situation where a member of our campus community is not abiding by the expectations of our safe return, we will utilize, if needed, our existing student and employee discipline processes. Jumping down to the very bottom with the instructional components, so utilizing the spring semester to really transition away from the temporary DE model and focus the summer and the fall, in really developing those schedule of classes for a transition back to face-to-face being the primary modality. That's obviously work that's done in conjunction with our faculty, led by our department chairs and our deans. As the department chairs and the deans work through their scheduling process in the spring for the fall, they're going to be doing so in the mindset that we will be back primarily face-to-face in the fall semester, starting with the summer intersession. And then real quickly for the non-instructional, utilizing stage one this spring to open up non-instructional opportunities. So not only are our faculty offices and potential for some office hours, but also looking at limited face-to-face counseling services. If needed, that's going to be an evolving conversation throughout the spring. But really, if there is a desire and if there are opportunities to provide services to meet a demand in a safe way, that is a conversation we're going to continue to explore here throughout the spring semester as part of stage one. And then also looking at our learning centers throughout the different campuses, as well as our library and some of those tutoring services, looking at ways to kind of bring those back in a limited, potentially by appointment only fashion here in the spring will be part of stage 1 reopening. And I'll take a moment, and if I may just grab a sip of water, and we will jump into stage 2 and stage 3, which will be a bit more briefer because we'll take more of a higher level approach with the understanding that when we get to the fall or August of 2022, the environment that we will be coming to work in at that time is unknown and will most likely evolve from what we can expect from today. All right, I'll slow scrolly to make sure and not making anybody dizzy. So now we'll start with our draft, and this is stage 2. Once again, this is the implementation goal of the summer and the fall of 2022. And the overarching concept is a full return, but we still have limitations throughout our campus. In looking at the summer and the fall expectations, some of the major differences or the major discussion points will be that the employees will engage their entire workday on campus. If accommodations are needed, those requests will go through our established process through our human resources department. So that is a bit of a shift from the spring, where we're still being very flexible and working with our direct supervisors to be creative if needed. It's transitioning out of that to a established, defined process that employees who need accommodations will all go through HR. And then our buildings will be open and operational, but we will have the different changes from the spring or the stage 1. Physical distancing will be encouraged but not required. And I think that's going to be a very big change here in the summer and into the fall in stage 2. We're promoting physical distancing when possible, but back to more of a traditional classroom setting and the removal of the social distancing within our instructional spaces and our non-instructional spaces will be part of the stage 2 reopening. And then really looking at having all of our ventilation systems are going to be up to date by this time to make sure that we meet COVID standards. That is a critical part of the stage 2 reopening. And then face mask will continue to be required. That's something that we will keep on the discussion point, but as it stands today, looking at the fall semester or August of 2022, approaching this plan with the initial concept that we will continue to mandate face mask indoors is a reasonable expectation at this time. But that is something that we will continuously monitor as the time goes by. And then we're making sure our employees have been provided the training. We're making sure that our students may stay on campus throughout the day. So we're transitioning out of the no congregation unnecessarily or no hanging out. In stage 2, students can freely come onto campus. There is no expectation that you come, you receive your services, and then you may be asked to leave, or the expectation is that you leave. We then transition back to a more traditional open campus model. We're continuing to have room and space instructions at the entranceway. And really looking at making sure that we have safe food services will be provided, looking at the different food options on our campus in more of a robust way. That's got to be the goal. If we have students coming back to campus in an open campus model, the bookstore, the cafeteria, the lunchbox, we got to have those services up and running in order to serve our students and our campus community. Our governance groups and search committees will be meeting in person, but one of the great comments is Zoom has opened up a whole new world for many of us. So as governance groups and search committees, continue to discuss and explore future options, if Zoom makes sense, that is a viable option moving forward. So that is going to be an evolving conversation. But the expectation that everything must be back in person and stay in person, I don't know if we're there. We are exploring different opportunities and would be open to conversations based on individual governance groups and committee thoughts during that time. All right, and really just kind of jumping down to stage number 3 and just being mindful of time. I'd love to leave about 30 minutes for question and answer or campus dialogue. Stage 3, this is our return to as close to normal as normal may be. And that is our target for the spring of 2023. This is where we are still promoting and encouraging a safe and a healthy campus. But no more, mandated floor markings or no more social distancing requirements. In broad context, the spring of 2023 or stage 3 is when we would ask people to come back to City College in the environment that it'll be moving forward and in the indefinite future. What that may look like, what guidance or what regulations we may still have to abide by at that time. I think that is a guess that we don't know at this time, but in looking at a definitive target date that we can circle our calendars to say by this time, we will be back to a traditional campus as close as we can get to the normal. The spring of 2023 is that date. So with that said, I am going to go ahead and take a brief pause. I will stop sharing my screen, and I do hope everybody had an opportunity to download the PDF if you chose to do so. Let me take a sip of water and we will go to questions. I do see we have over 100 participants and we will try to get to everybody's questions. If we do have a lot of them, we can stay a few minutes past 3 o'clock. I want to make sure I'm respectful of everybody's time, but not shortchange the opportunity to dialogue and respond to any questions the campus may have. So with that said, we will take a brief pause. I know that was a bit of a presentation. So as that sinks in over the next minute or two, if questions pop up, please feel free or comfortable to raise your Zoom hand, and I can take a moment and let you ask your question and try my best to respond. So with that said, we'll take a pause and let some of the Zoom hands pop up before we start the Q&A session. All right, we will go ahead and get started. I see a hand up from Dr. Noonley.
Okay, thank you, Chancellor Martin. Welcome to CCSF. Okay, so you stated that in stage 2, we would encourage and not require social distancing. So what that creates is a gray area. And when you have a gray area, that results in the instructor needing to do the policing. You will get to know me. I'm like very feisty and I feel like I could run my class. But what about my more shy instructor who may feel like I want this to happen? And then there's a student like me that's like, I'm not having it, right? So how do we avoid the gray area situations where the instructor can say, this is the policy, and not get pushback from maybe, a smaller minority of the students saying, I don't want to do this. Thanks.
Well, it's very nice to meet you, Dr. Noonley, and thank you for the question. And to respond directly, I think it really is going to hinge on communication. In taking a step back, as we move forward through these stages, there are several points where we're going to have to support each other and make sure that we are communicating clearly and communicating expectations in a way that resonates with our campus community. So in regards to future iterations of the reopening plan and how it's communicated out, I think the concept of encouraged social distancing, or the articulation of that needs to be defined and refined, because I'm envisioning, and obviously this is up for discussion, a campus to where we are having communications and signage saying, if you don't need to stand shoulder to shoulder with somebody, then give some space, provide some space. But at that time, as a campus, we are not enforcing social distancing. So we're still promoting it, saying as part of a safe and healthy campus, it's a good idea. And please do it if you are able. But the enforcement of it would not be in place during the fall semester. So there would be no expectation that social distancing be enforced. But in our communications, in our signage, in our return to campus, our safety campaign, we're still saying it's a good idea. If possible, please do it. Be a responsible member of our campus community, and provide some space, if possible, when on our campus. So I don't know if that directly answered your question, but thank you for that. And if I missed, please jump back in, Dr. Noonley, and let me know. All right, I see Jeff Kelly's hands up. Jeffrey Kelly. Jeffrey, you're muted.
Welcome back. And my question is, I know that there's potential layoffs coming on the classified side. And will there be enough classified custodians around to clean the main campus and also do deep cleaning in the various centers?
Jeffrey, that's a good question. I don't have a definitive answer to that. I do know we are working through those conversations right now. And as we come back in the spring and looking at our staffing and looking at the demands for our facilities, that is a reconciliation we're going to have to make. We're going to have to put a plan together. It may not be a plan that deep cleans or provides the level of cleaning that we would all love to see. But ultimately, it's developing that plan based on a reasonable expectation of sustainability and communicating that plan out. I mean, that is going to be a critical part. So it's really the reconciliation of our staffing and our workforce to the demand at that time, and then making sure that that reconciliation be part of campus conversations just like this, to make sure everybody at least understands the plan that we can commit to as an institution. So that is where we're at today, but thank you for the question.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Newman, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I thought I saw your hand jump back up. I'll give you
You did. You saw it jump back up.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like what you're saying is the goal is to create a culture where everybody kind of just, this is how we get down. So then the instructor won't be forced to become the police, the social distance police. Is that what you're saying? Yes,
that is a very nice summary of it.
Okay. And so since I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity one more time, one more question, then I'll get out of the way. As you know, we are a highly diverse campus, and our biggest student population is my Pan-Asian students, right? And so we also are San Francisco. And so that means we're protest city. So what are we going to do to make sure that we have protection for our students if folks come up, it's like, take the diaper off your face, or you bought the disease? How have you thought about that? Because I saw the enforcement if you're violating health rules, but what about those personal safety things? Now I'm quiet.
And to respond to the question is, those are the type of situations that we will potentially encounter as we go through this process. And it's being mindful that we do have existing practices in place. Our campus police are trained and are very well prepared to address situations of a similar nature. So it's really working with our campus police as well as other departments on campus to really prepare for those situations when they may occur. So it's really, there's no new plan or new approach. It's really looking at some of the plans that we have in place and making sure that we're prepared to implement those if and when the time comes, when we may have a situation where there is a potential protest or congregations of large gatherings on our campus in the spring semester. Thank you. All right. So I am looking at the Zoom hand function. I did see a couple of chat functions, and I'm going to try and respond and read them and talk at the same time. So please bear with me as I scroll up to the top. But let me enlarge the font so I can see it. All right. The question is, please update plans for the library at Ocean. I've heard reports of the need for further delays. Great question, Harry. I know that our library has gone through some walkthroughs right now as part of the return to campus process. In looking at where we're at today, we still believe our hope to have spaces open and available in the spring semester for some of those limited student opportunities. So I do not have a definitive date for a reopening, but I do know that opening up the library and some of those instructional spaces for our students to study is part of the phase 1 plan and is part of our spring work. So as we get back in the spring, I will make a note to make sure that we highlight where we're at in reopening our library to make sure that we continue that conversation so we know when those opportunities may exist for our students. So thank you for the chat question here. All right, I see a question from Craig. Will students who want to add a class be allowed to come to class? For students who want to add a class be allowed to come to class? I believe so, and if I'm understanding the question correctly, Craig, is that if I am a student who is looking to add a class that is meeting in person, if I come onto campus and am looking to get a late add to that class, will we be able to serve that student? And I think that that is absolutely a critical demand that we have to meet. To say that if a student comes onto campus and wants to add an in-person class and there's room available, to turn that student away, I think would be a disservice to that student and a opportunity for us to make sure that our plans include the ability to serve that student. So to respond to the question directly is yes, and more details on how we can do that will be a part of the spring discussions. Craig, I saw your Zoom hand go up, and I may have misunderstood your question and took a left turn there, so I apologize if I did, but jump on in.
Thanks. No, you understood the question correctly, but more specifically, the issue is with lists of, I don't know how access control is going to be in the building. Like if a student is not yet registered in classes but wants to register, are they going to be allowed to come to my class to try to add it?
At this time, I don't. The answer is yes, but I don't know how that strategic or that process works, because I believe that in order to access our facilities, a student would need to obviously show proof of vaccination. But if there's an interest in a class that is currently in person, I think the two of those would be enough to allow the student into the facility to get what they need to enroll into that class. So I don't think we would ever want to turn away a student in that situation. So the answer is yes, but the specifics we'll have more for that in the spring as those situations unfold.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right. And then I see a follow-up question from Harry in regards to contradictory messaging about the need for social distancing. Will the minimum required enrollment for spring continue to be 15? Thank you, question for that. Thank you, Harry, for that question. We are approaching the spring semester with physical distancing required in our classroom. So I don't know if every physical space has the hard cap of 15, but we are going to continue that for the spring semester in regards to physical distancing requirements in the classroom. Part of the reopening plan is to transition out of the physical distancing in the summer and into the fall. And if health guidance permits us to do that in the summer and in the fall, then our class numbers would turn back to more of a traditional number or a cap pre-pandemic. All right, and I'm looking for Zoom hands, so I don't want to be completely lost in the chat where I'm ignoring Zoom hands. So please raise your Zoom hand if you have a question. All right, David, question, how do enrollments for the spring of 2022 look compared to previous years at this stage of the registration cycle? Really good question, David. I don't have that information now, but when we come back in the spring semester, we can make sure that we highlight that information as part of our reopening discussions. If I were to respond right now, I would be guessing, and I don't want to do that. So thank you for the question. And I think the enrollment part of the discussion will be an important part of our reopening talks when we return in the spring. All right. Janie, access to classes and services in person are important educational equity issue. We know that Black and brown students in particular have questions. I would hope that we could encourage more classes services to return. Okay, thank you, Janie, for your comments. All right. I see Nicole, and I'm trying to keep up with the chat, so please keep your questions going in the chat. And once again, the Zoom hand is a viable option, so I'll check for those. Not seeing any. All right, back to the chat. All right, I see. Okay, Harry Bernstein, I see your Zoom hand raised. Please jump in, Harry. Harry, I don't know if you purposely raised your Zoom hand, but.
I'm unmuted now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, couple things. I'm wondering if this is a one-off event, or are you contemplating any regular forums or town hall meetings of some to be determined later?
Thank you, Harry, for that question. They will need to be regular. So as we get back in the spring, these types of dialogues and these types of campus conversations need to be standardized and part of our routine campus dialogue. The last several weeks, we've been taking this initial concept to different and smaller groups just to get the initial litmus test. And then after getting that feedback from those smaller groups, we are now here to the broader campus. So this is where we will continue to stay in the spring to make sure that as we get through different components of the stage one, opportunities like this are throughout the spring semester.
If you'll allow me to follow up on Mr. Kelly, who raised the question about the classified staffing, especially about the custodians. It's really been unclear what the criteria for the cuts were. They were initiated before you arrived in late October. And so we're wondering if student needs and campus requirements, if they're really inimical to the broader needs, because they were kind of privately determined, and now seem to be stuck with them. It's a problem, and I don't know how that's being resolved.
Harry, I appreciate the comments and in being respectful of the process.
Yes,
I do want us to focus on how we can really look at our staffing in the next couple of weeks and start preparing for the spring semester. And that is very complicated. I think we all know that in a lot of different ways. But at this point, we need to start working through some of these checklist items. And we would love to have several more staffing opportunities, I think, in a lot of different areas. But as of today, and really looking at the spring semester, it's putting together a plan that is sustainable, that is meeting all of the health standards as a minimum, but also something that we can count on as a campus. So one of the things, and I don't mean to go in a bit of a left turn here, but in regards to the imperativeness of reconciling staffing and reopening, is that as we come back and as we bring students back to the campus, the things that we are committing to, the things that we are saying we are going to do to make sure that this is a safe and healthy campus, we have to make those happen. We can't fall short on those. So in looking at how staffing plays a part into that, when we come back in the spring semester and as we start implementing some of these things, if we don't have the staffing to do them effectively, we're going to have to have a conversation. We're going to have to challenge ourselves to find a way to move forward in a environment where staffing in a lot of different areas may not be at the level that we want it to, given the circumstance of the spring semester.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Abigail, I saw your hand up, and then I see Dr. Nunley hands up again. So you're in the queue, Dr. Nunley. Abigail, go ahead.
Since others haven't been raising their hand, I figured I'd jump in here. For this past semester, faculty and deans have been running around opening the doors. It's just been pretty chaotic and disruptive, doing that through text and phone calls and everything. And I know the plan is that we're going to have ambassadors in place to take over that duty, but could you speak to sort of when you think that is realistically going to happen, whether or not that's really going to be there January 15th, or are we really looking at it more likely coming sometime in February? Because we're having to sort of address that, and there's a lot of discussion about it. And so what does it realistically look like for that? Thank you.
Yes, Abigail. And, you know, as we stand here today on December 17th, I do think the January 15th or in and around that time is still the goal. But in regards to being fully transparent, is with getting through the process of conversations, getting those individuals identified, trained if needed, and then scheduled. Most likely, we may be looking at a February implementation time. That's not to say we're going to try our best to hit that earlier timeline, but in being honest, where we're at today, I think February is more of the realistic timeframe for us to have a fully in place set of campus ambassadors.
Thank you for the honesty on that. Appreciate that.
All right, Dr. Nunley.
Okay, so as you can see, I turned my camera on. You see my gray hair, right? So I'm an old Black woman, right? I'm 64 years old. So, and disproportionately, old Black people like me, COVID, you know, it impacts us deeply. And Chancellor Martinez, when I do teach face-to-face, I'm going remote this time, I teach in the mud. And I don't trust that building. Because, you know, and I'm worried about some of my colleagues are going to go back face to face. I thank them for doing that, because I'm not doing that, because I ain't ready to die like that. So what are you going to do to make somebody like me really, really believe that you took care of all that kind of stuff, right? Because I don't trust it right now.
Sure. So I look forward to and in leveraging some of the response from an earlier question in regards to the spring semester and how we're going to move forward with the reopening process, is if we are to target the summer and the fall semester as the implementation of primarily face-to-face modality. We have between now and then is our runway to start going through these items and checklisting them off. So to respond directly, Dr. Nunley, is that between now and August, I would hope that you would be able to definitively see some of these items being implemented. And if we get to, May 13th or June 7th, and we're nowhere close, then we're going to have to reevaluate and make sure that we're not rushing back to a situation where we're not ready to do so. So this plan is more of a roadmap. It tells us the main things we need to do by when in order to make sure we can properly and safely reopen our campus. So between now and the fall, we will have conversations like this. We will have information that definitively points to implementing many of these items, and we'll have opportunities to discuss things that still may need some more work and how we'll approach those when the time comes. So thank you for the question. All right, jumping back into the chat function. I see some comments. I just don't want to miss any questions. I see a question from Nicole. Will on-campus and remote student employment opportunities be restored? Will prior funding for these positions be restored? And I think in regards to opportunities for student employment, that is something our student affairs team is having dialogue on. So bringing student workers back to our campus in a safe way, I think, is part of the stage one. I had some great comments at the PGC from our student leaders, specifically speaking to that, is how are we going to provide some of those opportunities to our students, because we know many of them would love the opportunity to come back onto campus and to generate some income to help them, but also help us as an institution move forward. So making sure that if those opportunities present themselves, they are part of the conversation. But ultimately, any student worker or employee would need to follow all of the guidance and the expectations that we all will follow, regardless if it's a student worker or an employee. So thank you for the question. All right, we've got 7 more minutes left, and being mindful of your time on December 17th, the last day of our fall semester. I appreciate everybody's willingness to engage in this dialogue and be present today. I know the timing is not ideal with finals wrapping up and a whole lot of grading that needs to be done. So I appreciate you taking time away from your students and your grading, as well as the programs and services from our classified support staff that are here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for engaging and listening. And as we get back in the spring, things are moving fast. We have variants. We have rising case numbers. When we get back in the middle of January, I don't know what the environment will be like, but I do know we will engage in conversations like these. We'll continuously look at this plan. We'll watch it evolve and develop together. And somehow we're going to figure out a way to move this institution forward collectively in a safe way. So that is where we're at today. And we will go ahead and give it a couple more moments. I don't want to needlessly linger when we're all very busy. So I will look for hands up. Dr. Numi, hand up one. Yes.
One more time.
Yeah.
So now this is because you'll find I'm about social justice and I think about everyone. So I think it would be smart for you to do something like this for the students, because I'm from child development and disproportionately the students are students of color and they're worried and concerned. So I think that would be great if you would create something like this to allow students to speak directly to you. Just
Great
a suggestion.
Thank you for that. Yes. All right. Looking for Zoom hands. All right, we're going to give it a long pause and then a slow countdown for any last minute questions or comments. And just for housekeeping purposes, this has been recorded and we do hope to have this Zoom recording up and available, and we'll get it out to the broader campus. So if you have colleagues who weren't able to be here today, please let them know that they'll be able to view the presentation and our dialogue over the next several weeks. And I see a question from Michael Adams in regards to the progress of buildings. And that's a really good question, Michael, and that's come up in different conversations is as we look at reopening our facilities, having a way to communicate a status report or a progress report, I think would be very valuable. I don't have details as to specifically how or how best to approach that, but I do want to acknowledge the need and importance to communicate to the building occupants that as we work through HVAC reviews, filter upgrades, floor markings, and etc., that we're communicating that work out to the campus. So really look forward to getting back in the spring and generating our brainstorming ideas on how we can effectively do that. All right, we're going to start the slow countdown, looking for Zoom hands, chat functions, and we're at the point in time where you could probably just unmute yourself and jump on in, starting with a 3, 2. City College of San Francisco. It has been a very wonderful first couple of weeks. Thank you so much for not only the amazing work that it's taken over the last several semesters, but the work that it took this semester to get us here to the end of another successful semester to where we have students completing, we have students progressing, and our community is still able to chase their educational goals based on the work that you're all doing. So I just wanted to take a moment and thank you for letting me be a small part of it the last couple of weeks. Have a great holiday season, and I look forward to coming back in January, rolling up our sleeves together and moving this institution in a better direction. So have a great afternoon, everybody. Have a great last day of finals, and have a great holiday season. Bye, Rams.